Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today we're talking about UAPs. We're going to talk about the new Tic Tac footage that was just released through Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and some exciting new pieces to that puzzle coming from a witness who was aboard the ship when this incident occurred. Not only was he there, he was the person monitoring the radar. So I'm going to give you the bullet points of all that he said. And we're also going to talk about a really cool interview that Jesse Michaels did on American Alchemy with Harold Malmgren. And Richard Dolan also did a really cool breakdown and response to that video. So as always, the links are below. I'm scrolling through my notes right now. I have about 7 pages of notes today. So I'm going to be looking at that a lot and just trying to read off of my own bullet points here. And I just wanted to tell you what you will find in the links and books area today, and also kind of give a little reminder of what you can get here on this channel and why you might choose Shock's Talks for your UAP news and ongoing understanding or developing understanding of this anomalous reality that we're in, this strange reality. So all the way down at the bottom, after the description, I have my links, and today we have the video that I'm going to be talking about, the interview with this new witness, and so it's episode 73 of Weaponized. This is Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp's podcast, and I'm giving you the YouTube link. The link after that is for the episode before that, number 72, where they just talk about the video footage that was released. And I covered that in an episode of Shock's Talks that I will link at the end of this. It'll be part of the end screen when you get to the end of this video. And then I linked the interview with Harold Malmgren, and it's titled "I Directly Handled UFO Material," which is cool and exciting. And then a little video from the New Paradigm Institute just expressing their concern with our government and other private entities basically calling in and potentially bringing down UAP in order to study them, and how Congress needs to be investigating these actions. And that is the New Paradigm Institute. They are headed up by Danny Sheehan, and they're often dealing with the legislature around this phenomena, as well as civil rights in general, and creating a better understanding of the nature of reality so that we as humanity can enter into a new paradigm of existence and hopefully like cooperation and peace. And then we have Richard Dolan's reaction video on the Harold Malmgren interview, which I actually enjoyed more than the interview itself. I watched both, of course, but Dolan is so cool. He's so smart, and he's the historian, so he has all this great context for these things that are happening. And I don't know about you, but I'm not great at history. I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm learning history through studying the UFO phenomena, because as I go through and I place things in the context of what was going on at that time in our government or in the world, that's how I'm like relearning my history, because it was just so long ago, and a lot of that stuff, it was hard for me to pay attention in school and hold on to all of those types of facts. I have other ways in which my mind excels, but holding on to information like that has always been difficult. So this channel is part of my own process of trying to do an action that allows me to really learn this history over time. And hopefully you're joining me on that journey and having fun along the way. Pentagon UFO vids is the last link. It's a Wikipedia link, but it also shows the footage of the Tic Tac incidents that we're going to be talking about today. So what you get on this channel, you get me talking. That's why it's called Shock's Talks. I'm focusing all my energy on researching and thinking, developing my own understanding, opinions, reflections, speculations. I'm keeping a very open mind, and I'm also following a very specific thread. I am resisting the urge to allow my mind to wander off onto too many tangents because I don't want to get distracted from basically developing my own big picture understanding that is meaningful and allows me to basically operate better in this reality, but also just to feel more at ease with all of the questions that I have about this anomalous stuff. And those questions come from my own personal experiences. And I don't talk about my own experiences a whole lot. I touch on them here and there to relate to what I'm speaking about, or just to start to share some of what I've been through to connect with you. But the thing is, I don't want to be the kind of person that makes my whole study about me and my experiences, because it's just so much bigger than that. And I do think that like there have been really important people throughout time who have come forward and really focused on the nuance of their experience, like Whitley Strieber, for example. And he is doing something special. He's really exposing the layers of his own internal landscape and how he connects with the phenomena in ways that are very important. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have had similar and yet different, very personal, very strange and nuanced experiences with non-human intelligence, or a phenomena that seems to relate to UFOs and UAP, aliens. There is a spiritual aspect to all this, a consciousness aspect, and all of that is very important. But there's also a lot of people who are approaching this from what some call the nuts and bolts angle. But basically, we're talking about trained witnesses, military, army, aircraft, people who work at nuclear bases, people who deal with nuclear weapons, lots of memos going back and forth between intelligence agencies and government officials, lots of money getting moved around in mysterious ways. We've had a very rich history of basically a cover-up going on in the United States around all of this, and every country around the world having their own experience with UAP in the present times, going back to the 40s and even before that. You know, there's the whole ancient alien side of this. So starting to study this topic is completely overwhelming. It almost can make your brain short circuit, and then you just don't want to go any further because it's too hard to grasp. There's too much information, too many names. It's all over the place. It touches so many areas of our reality, and it's easy to just shut down and say, you know what, I don't have time for that. I need to pay my bills. I need to move forward and live my life, and I can't handle it. So if you're that kind of person and you know you want to just follow along lightly and like understand the basic through line, I've got you. I'm here for you. That's what this channel is about. And also, I'm digging pretty deep, but there are people out there digging so much deeper because they can do it full time, or they have a different kind of brain than me, or different resources. So we're all doing what we can out here, but this is a human experience issue. This is something that we share. This is not a topic that is off limits to you or anyone. This affects us all. This is global. This is happening now. It's accelerating. There's tons of activity going on all around the world. It's beyond our systems of power and control. It's beyond anything that our governments can seem to understand, or even our highest scientific institutions. And it's very important that we all pay attention to what's going on. And that is very difficult to do when all of our systems of power refuse to accept this reality and address it in a reasonable way. So everyone who's really fighting for transparency or disclosure is on the same page about at least that. We just want to get this knowledge out in a way where it's taken seriously by the majority of people, not just this small group that's been slowly gaining momentum over time, but it's common knowledge, and we can all share the reality that we've experienced, people we know, things that are happening every single day, and also just like find a path forward. How do we deal with this? What does it mean to us? How does it reshape our reality? How does it reshape the way we approach science or explain the nature of our reality to our children? You know, maybe it changes the way we shape our governments. Maybe it changes the way we treat our planet. Maybe it changes all that we care about and it totally flips us into a new paradigm. So this topic is big and it's important to me, as you can tell. So let's get into today's news. So basically, this new witness that came forward on the Weaponized podcast is he's in his 40s. His name is Alex Wiggins, or Alexandra Wiggins. And he's a Black guy, he looks to be, which I'm saying for people who are only listening and will never watch the videos. And I mention it because there are a lot of white people in this field, and it's really great just to see anyone different speaking up and sharing and giving us all that feeling of accessibility, that this is something that we all experience as humans. This is not a white male dominated experience, although it may appear that way based on the way the media is structured and who we have at the forefront right now, but all of that is changing. Hopefully I can be part of that too. Maybe you're here because you want to hear a girl or woman speak about this topic and not just another man, but whatever. Anyway, all the men that are out there working on this, I value and respect because they are doing great work. I just feel like it's always exciting to see someone different join the conversation. So, and there's lots of people, you know, who are not just white men in this, but again, this is why I'm making a big deal about it right now. So Alexandra Wiggins has been in the Navy for 23 years and counting, and he works in San Diego. So his last command was on the USS Jackson. That is the ship that the video footage was released from just recently, and that footage came from 2023. So he makes a very big point in talking about how he loves the Navy, he loves his job, he doesn't view himself as a whistleblower, he's just a witness, and he is someone who saw the video footage when it got released and was thinking, well, I was there. I was one of the people who was a part of that, and I'm going to come forward and just share data for what it's worth. Now, interestingly, George Knapp pokes at him a little bit in this interview and kind of gets him to admit that he did grow up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he did watch George Knapp over the years. So he's like, you weren't influenced by me and you're just like making this up, right? You know, he kind of teases him because it's the kind of thing that someone could possibly dig up and say like, oh, he's just, you know, someone who always thought about UFOs and so he probably just made it up, whatever. That, I mean, we're kind of past that, but you never know. But the thing is, I found it interesting that they brought that up because maybe that gave this person the confidence to feel like, yeah, there's a legitimate audience for this type of information and I don't have to be afraid anymore. You know, we're moving past that stigma and these witnesses can speak more freely now because of all the work that has been done and all of the different people who have come forward. So, anyway, he talks about how as a trained witness, you know, you see satellites, you see shooting stars, you see all kinds of things that you know how to identify, but you also see a lot of things that are unexplainable. And usually people kind of just joke about it, the people he's working with, and that's just what they do. There's not a whole lot of protocol around it. If it's something that is not a threat, it's not in the vicinity of, I guess, what did he call it? It's not a target because they're not targeting anything, a contact when they see something on the radar. If it's not a contact that is inside of a certain range, it doesn't initiate a protocol of defense because it's just stuff out there far enough away. He's working in a zone that is not a war zone. It's not like a heightened threat, you know, everybody be on alert because you might be attacked at any moment. It's more like this routine kind of stuff that they're doing, a very mellow job, it sounds like. And he goes over that again and again in full detail in this interview. And his whole job is monitoring this radar. So he is actually an expert at that, so much so that he's been kind of like shifted around between different Navy ships. You know, he talks later on in the interview about how he was actually on one of the other ships that had a Tic Tac sighting, and I'm skimming down here. It was the Omaha. So we'll get back down to that, but let's go back up. Hold on here. Okay. So the protocol. So when they're monitoring the radar and they see something strange, then they typically go outside and look to see if they can see with their eye whatever it is that they saw on the radar. And so there's different kinds of sensors on these ships, and he's looking at thermal radar. So it's not like a high definition, beautiful, gorgeous, up close movie camera image of whatever's out there, but it's just kind of like a shape on a screen, But he's so expert at being able to know what those shapes mean, because that's his whole training. It's looking at silhouettes, it's looking at thermal signatures, it's looking at the different kinds of propulsion signatures that can be seen with all earthly known vehicles and other anomalous things like weather phenomena. So when he sees something that does not fit any of that stuff, it's a very big deal, and he knows this is something anomalous. This is something different. So he goes out onto the bridge to see what's going on. And he said, to his surprise, it was something he'd never witnessed before, ever. A light on the horizon that looked like it was surfacing from under the water and going up. And this is very abnormal. Like, there's nothing that does this. And he's not sure of what he's seeing. But he's scanning his mind for all the different signatures. Could it be this? Could it be that? No, because the lights aren't blinking. No, this isn't happening, blah, 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 blah. So he's going through his whole list. And then he kind of decides to talk to another group of people on the ship that he called CSM. I don't know what that stands for. I wrote down some of these acronyms, but that one I don't have. I don't even know if he remembered that one, because there was one that he didn't remember. But anyway, that he asks this other group on the crew to take a look on this SAPPHIRE technology. And I had to look this up also, because we hear a lot of terms when we're talking about these things, like let me find it. There's so many notes here. SAPPHIRE. Okay. So in the US Navy and military aviation context, SAPPHIRE refers to system for aerospace, physical, phenomena, integration, reconnaissance, and exploitation. This is a data integration and analysis program. It collects, analyzes, and integrates massive amounts of sensor data from ships, aircraft, satellite, and ground stations. It focuses on anomalous objects or unknowns, including UAPs detected by radar, electro-optical infrared, acoustic sensors, and satellite imaging. Its goal is to track, categorize, and predict the behavior of fast, small, or stealthy objects in air and space. So again, the output of this is what we see in these videos. It does not look like a whole lot. And he talks a lot, this guy, Alex, about how, videos are going to be grainy at night. You're out at sea at night, first of all. And also this is, it's scanning for enough data to be able to identify, but it's not doing this high resolution imaging, which I guess we all wish we had that and would love to see that, but it's like, that would be really hard to do, it's that equipment. I don't know why they don't do that. It seems like they have tons of money for all kinds of other weird stuff, but for whatever reason, that this is the system they have, and it is actually giving them tons of data. It's just something that visually we the people wish we had more, but honestly these videos are still very profound. So when you see it, you see these little blobs basically, and you can kind of see their movement. And in the video that was released, you only see two of them in that video, but he said, for the clip that we've all seen, he said, when that clip ends, what really happens is they zoomed out, got a wider shot of what was going on, and they identified 4 of these things. And then they watched it for a while, and eventually all 4 just took off simultaneously, which is very strange and very different from anything else. And he imagines that this could be due to some kind of like joint execution of a command, like we're all going to go now, and then they go, you know, like similar to how the Navy operates if they all say we're going to launch these fighter pilots all at the same time, or whatever they're doing, moving their ships or anything else. So some kind of synchronized effort. Or that all 4 of these units, the UAP, are under one entity's control. Whatever that entity is, I don't think he even means like a being necessarily, but could be a computer, a command ship, or whatever. So that was his speculation. But, you know, they kind of get into like this whole thermal signature thing. And it's so cool to hear these firsthand stories because there's so many details in it. And you should really listen to this guy talk and hear about like all the little nuances, like, you know, how people in these crews talk about this stuff when it happens, the excitement, the nervousness, the different responses, that's one of the special things about these released Pentagon videos that we've all seen is you can hear the pilots in the recording. So you can hear their voices like, oh, that's a go fast, or oh, watch it, you know, there it goes. And they have these names for things, and they've had these forever, and these guys are used to seeing this stuff. It's very common, but it's also very awe-inspiring when it does happen. And he makes it very clear that like there was nothing about it that seemed threatening. It didn't trigger some kind of like protocol of like, we need to all engage everybody. There's like a crazy anomalous thing, like quick fire at it. That's not the Navy response. They're actually kind of casual about these things, similar to like seeing a endangered species out there or something, you know. It's like it's far enough away, it's minding its own business, it's outside of the vicinity of whatever they're monitoring and doing, and they're not interfering, which I actually think is better than the alternative, you know. It's like they're kind of being chill about it, and I respect that. But it's also crazy because on a large, you know, global scale, maybe we don't need to be totally chill about this, but not that we should attack, but just that we should be paying closer attention and trying to find out more. And I'm sure some people are, you know, but this is why organizations like the New Paradigm Institute are trying to urge Congress to get involved, the oversight committees, because these are things that our own military and Navy and Air Force is dealing with. And so we should be talking about it, thinking about it, and working with these people to create better systems for how to deal with this stuff when it does happen. So basically, he's talking with the guys about this, or the people, and one of them says something like, oh no, like that's probably just like, you know, some kind of airplane. I forget what he said it was. Let me see what's in my notes. He's like, oh, it's just a 747. And this guy, Alex, is like, okay, well, did you see wings on it? Because his whole job is identification, and he's trying to be like, tell me what you saw that made you think that. And he's like, oh, it's just so far away. It just, you know, looked like a blob, you know. And nobody else agreed with this one person, but this guy, Alex, just thought to himself, okay, well, I'm not gonna like fight that battle right now. But he kind of tucked it away, and literally 20 seconds later, you know, or something, 20 minutes later, I think, what did he say? He basically goes back 20 minutes, not seconds. And see, these are the dangers in the oral tradition. You gotta get your facts right, and it's not easy. Like, that's why I take these notes and I try to repeat these things to myself. But, you know, it takes a little while to learn these stories. So anyway, he goes back and is looking at the radar again, and he basically sees a plane, and he tells the person he's working with to zoom in on that. And because of the way these systems are set up on the ship, they can kind of broadcast different channels. There's like another control room where everybody's watching what they're seeing on their screens. And that guy who was questioning the identification earlier is watching those screens. And so he kind of switches the channel, projects the image of this airplane that's happening, and says, like, so take a look at this and tell me what you think. Like, see the difference, you know? And it's like very, very obvious that this plane that's even farther away than the Tic Tac was has clear signatures. You can see the wings, you can see the silhouette, you can see the propulsion. Like, you can see all of these things that are completely different from that other thing that they just saw. And so he gets this little feeling of validation, like, you know, just grateful that he has an immediate example to compare with, because you know how our mind can play tricks on us and people can tell themselves a story and then just stick with that story. And you need that data, you need that visual confirmation to kind of help your own mind say, okay, wow, you're right. Like, that was anomalous, that was different. So it's really cool that he had that moment and shared that part of the story. And then he does talk about how he was on the USS Omaha during their series of encounters. He was not working at that time. He was more in an observational, like, sounded like a test run for, like, oh, he's going to come aboard this ship and do some stuff, but he was just in his, like, maybe orientation phase or something like that. And so he talks about just what they saw. And so he's had a few of these anomalous sightings in his career now. And going down through the notes. Yeah, at the very end of the interview, they kind of ask him, like, are you going to testify? And again, he's like, I'm not a whistleblower. I'm just a witness. I have no intention of testifying. Basically, I just want to share my story. So, like, I'm open to talking. It sounds like if more podcasts want to interview him, he'll talk more. And I think it's valuable. We should have plenty of videos of these stories over time so that we can all continue to analyze. Because let me tell you, these firsthand accounts and listening to a human speak in their own voice and watching their face and being able to take in all that visual and kind of auditory information all at once, you get such a strong sense of who these people are. You get such a strong sense of what they're saying is real or not real, you know? And I think that's a very important part of this process of learning about this stuff, is not just to take anyone else's word for it. It's good to have, you know, easy access to the facts and to listen to different people, but go to those firsthand interviews and really see who these people are, because there's a lot in that. And speaking of interesting interviews, I want to jump back to this interview with Malmgren. But before we go there, let's just wrap up with some of the Tic Tac video information just as a recap. So I went to the Wikipedia site of the Pentagon videos, which I linked at the bottom of the links today. And there are 3 major videos that are linked there. The first one, it's 1 minute and 17 seconds. It's the FLIR video. And FLIR is another thing I had to look up because they talk about it all the time. So I kind of knew what they meant, but I didn't know exactly what it stood for. It's like forward facing. Let me find it. Where did I put this? I did not organize my notes today, you guys. It's FLIR. FLIR. I could have Googled it in this time, but I'm committed. Forward something. It's good to have these little quiet pauses. You can let your mind wander for a minute. Okay, so that's Sapphire. We talked about that. FLIR. Forward-looking infrared. Another acronym. Forward-looking infrared. It refers to a technology that uses infrared radiation or heat to create images, often used in military and civilian applications, like night vision and detecting temperature variations. The term is also the name of a company, Taladyne FLIR LLC. That's a major manufacturer of these thermal imaging cameras and sensors. So the reason I wanted to make such a point about looking that up is because we do hear this when they're referring to this first video, and this is from the USS Nimitz. That's the really famous 2004, November 2004 incident. That's one big Tic Tac one. The next big Tic Tac one is the gimbal video, and the next one is Go Fast. Gimbal was January 2015. Go Fast was also January 2015. Now, just to put it back into context for us, on December 16th, 2017, the New York Times reported on these incidents. That was the big Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean article. And they published the two videos, FLIR and Gimbal, with the release of that article. So that was a big moment for mainstream coverage of this UAP stuff. And then the Washington Post posted a video of a similar encounter. That was the gimbal. So again, these videos featuring cockpit display data and infrared imagery, along with audio of communications between the pursuing pilots, were initially provided to the press by Christopher Mellon. And this is all from Wikipedia, this part, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. And around that same time, this is when Luis Elizondo, who at the time was the director of AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, had resigned from the Pentagon in October 2017 to protest government secrecy in opposition to the investigation, stating in a resignation letter to Defense Secretary James Mattis that the program was not being taken seriously. So kind of important stuff, a lot, again, so such a dense topic, but we have this big New York Times article, the release of these Pentagon videos. We have this guy who's working in this government program, which we all know is kind of a joke because they always are. It's like, is it just a cover? Is it there to kind of make us ignore what's really going on? But Luis Elizondo cares a lot about what's going on, and he says, I got to quit this thing because you guys don't take it seriously and you're not doing enough. He writes his book Imminent later, which I've covered on Shocks Talks, and he shares a lot about his own experience, and he's still helping to work towards disclosure, just like so many of the other actual whistleblowers and witnesses who have come forward. And so, yeah, there's a lot. And then I just also wanted to recap something that Richard Dolan said when he was talking about the Tic Tac stuff. You know, it's 2025 now, so we're about 2 decades into dealing with this particular classification of UAP appearing specifically off the coast of Southern California and being witnessed by trained witnesses and captured on radar and imaging technologies that the Navy uses to keep us all safe, you know, like kind of a big deal, a big pile of evidence here. And this is a very strong evidence of an ongoing, unexplained presence, you know, so this is a big deal. And these things are going in and out of our oceans, which is so fascinating. And I'm really excited that I have Richard Dolan's new book on the USOs, unidentified submergible objects or submerged objects. It's a whole UFO book about stuff in the ocean and coming out of the ocean and under the ocean and being retrieved from the ocean. So speaking of things in the ocean, let's go into the Malmgren interview. So one of the things that he talks about that is the kind of headline for this interview that is on American Alchemy is that I touched anomalous materials. So it's physical. It's not a dream. It's not a vision. It's something real that crashed into the ocean that the Navy retrieved, and they have pieces of it, and I touched it. And you know when this happened? 1962. So we're going back in time now. And just to remind us how long, and this isn't even the beginning, but just how long this has been going on and how long the government has been taking this seriously. So Harold Malmgren was a presidential advisor. They called him the Whiz Kid. He was super smart. He worked in the war room for Kennedy. He was part of the Cuban Missile Crisis, de-escalation. And again, I'm not a history expert, so go watch Richard Dolan's video on this for all the details. But also in the initial interview that Jesse Michaels posted, you can hear Malmgren talking all about this experience. It's fascinating just to kind of understand his character, what kind of man he is, and the career that he had that was so legit, you know? And I love hearing these firsthand stories, but it's like, again, like a 3-hour interview or something. And it's kind of, he's older, he's like 89 in this interview, so there's some subtitles if you have a hard time hearing. But the day after that interview, his health collapsed. He was hospitalized. Jesse was able to talk to him on the phone, and then he died pretty soon after. So this was kind of a big deal, like deathbed interview where he's sharing all this important information that relates to UAPs. So he was about 27 during that time in his career back in 62, and he was helping to de-escalate this crisis to avoid World War III. And around that same time, something very interesting was going on, and this was a nuclear missile test. So Dolan goes over all these different project names. I'm going to tell them to you, even though it barely means anything to me. But in October 25th, 1962, the military is conducting Bluegill Triple Prime. That's the name of this project, which is this testing of nuclear missiles. And this was a subset of Operation Fishbowl, which was a subset of Operation Dominic. So those are like deeper cuts than most of us need right now, but for whatever reason, I'm putting it in here. So that one day when I go back and study deeper, because I have more time and I'm financially independent and all I'm doing is researching UAPs, I can dig into every little detail, and I'll go back and I'll compare my notes to these notes, and I'll say, oh yeah, those were the 3 projects that were going on, and this was that thing that Malmgren was talking about. So anyway, during this test, as we know, these UAP have a special interest in nuclear test sites. And this test was going on over the ocean, and the bogey, or the Tagalong, because at the time, these pilots saw these things all the time, and so they had these names for them. And this Tagalong appeared next to the missile that was being tested, but then they detonated that missile. And this gives off a very powerful electromagnetic pulse, EMP. Yeah, I think that's what the electromagnetic pulse. And this object tumbles and falls into the Pacific Ocean. And then they did call it a cigar-shaped object. So I don't know if that means that it was a saucer on its side and the silhouette made it look cigar-shaped, or if it was really like a Tic Tac. Who knows? But interesting, it could be. They don't say that specifically. And Malmgren was brought into this because there was a Navy response and a recovery of this crashed craft that fell into the ocean. And there was footage of it as well, but a large white triangle was placed over the footage of the UFO, and it was never redacted. So that was a piece of footage that we've never really seen what it really looked like. It was blocked out. So Malmgren is asking about this tag-along because he hears about this incident, and he's working for Kennedy, and he wants to know what's going on here. And he continues to press for details, and eventually he ends up going to Los Alamos National Lab for a briefing. And here he meets with this guy, Geese, I think he said Geese or Geis. Anyway, this guy is Jeffrey Bezos' grandfather, random fact that Dolan brought into the mix for us. And he's showing Malmgren materials from this anomalous object and the object that they called the tag-along, and he tells him to touch it. And this is the interesting part of the interview. Malmgren talks about how it doesn't feel like anything else. There's no tactile response in his body that is reminiscent of touching metal or stone or wood or plastic or anything known. He said it felt like nothing, like he didn't know what it felt like. Something totally different, which is very interesting. And he got a telepathic download from touching the object, which is also so bizarre, but a very fascinating part of many stories where people touch UAP or UFOs. And so he said he could hear something in his head, or he felt like there were words going into it, but it was almost like it got planted into his subconscious. So it felt like more like a download where maybe that information was just in him now. And once he had that experience and reported back to this guy what had happened, it was like they said, okay, yep, that's what happened to us, or like that's what happened to other people that touched it. So they're all kind of like, all right, we're letting you in on this. They start giving him a full briefing of other world technologies. And again, we're in 1962 here, and we did mention Kennedy in a recent episode because there's new declassified stuff coming out around Kennedy, and so people are again stirred up and trying to understand the possible connection to the UAP stuff and what Kennedy knew. And so Malmgren does say that Kennedy did travel to Los Alamos right after this happened, because he was also interested in the Tagalong specifically, not the missile test, but that Tagalong. What was that? So this is something that is not a one-of-a-kind happening. He says that incidents like Bluegill triple prime had been occurring for decades, and by that we mean incidents where a tag-along came and put itself next to a nuclear missile, just like all the UAP UFO sightings that have happened around nuclear bases and on ships that are carrying nuclear weapons, and that the UFOs had always been attracted to quote unquote tip of the spear technologies. So you can imagine the most advanced war stuff that we have, basically. So very fascinating to have this new witness coming forward, and at the same time to hear an interview that allows us to go back in time and just to realize how prevalent this stuff was then, and how openly people who are really working as military pilots and Air Force and Navy, like they are seeing this stuff and they have their protocols and they love their jobs. And now that they're, we're moving out of maybe some of the stigma in a way, it's allowing more people to feel comfortable coming forward. Or maybe it's just a new generation of people, because this man, Alex, he's my age, and we just see things differently and care about things, and we're not afraid of the truth, and we want to talk about stuff, and he's very level-headed and very reasonable in his approach to all this. He has his own career. He's not doing this for fame or money. He's not getting anything out of it. He's not attacking anyone. He's just like, hey, I was there. You can trace him being there. It was his admiral that connected him with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp in the interview. He has all his stuff in the background, his Navy stuff and his flag and everything. And it, just seems pretty legit. And these journalists who have been working on this for so long have so many connections that, it's easier to trust them in terms of who they bring forward than just any random person that you see, on the internet talking about these things. So even though we don't have necessarily the mainstream news outlets covering this all the time, we have some really strong independent journalists in the field who have been working for really long, like lifetime long careers on this topic. And it's absolutely ridiculous to ignore the work that they're doing. So anyway, I'm just like I was listening to Chani Nicholas, and she always says, I'm your astro bestie, because she's an astrologer. And I was like, haha, I'm kind of like your UAP bestie, I hope. But maybe one day I'll be more. And, for now, I am studying this stuff very sincerely. I am reading books, not just watching videos and listening to podcasts, but I'm doing all of the above. And also reading articles, and also going to conferences and shaking the hands of these people who I listen to on the internet, because I like to get my own firsthand understanding of who I trust and who I want to listen to. And it's Come on, it's easy. We know what's up. We can look at people and be like, no, you're not for me. I don't need that. Or yes, I value what you're saying and how you're going about it, and I'm listening. I want to hear more, you know? So I am bringing all of that here and sharing it back out with you because I want us all to talk about this and think about it. All the links are there for you to do your own deep diving if you have the time. And if you don't, I hope that this little juicy tidbit was enough just to spark your imagination and keep your wheels turning and keep you engaged with this topic, because it's very easy for us to put it out of mind, out of sight, you know? But it's important. It's very important. And it's so interesting, isn't it? So put your comments below, please. I would love to hear your thoughts, and like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching the channel. Thanks for being with me. And I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.